Thank you for joining us in this session of Spokane Public Schools Keep Learning Series for Literacy. Today's lesson is for all our fifth graders out there, and any child who's interested is welcome to join us. My name is Mrs. Rich, and I'm a fifth grade teacher at Woodridge Elementary in Spokane Schools. I will be your teacher for this lesson. I'm so glad you are participating with me today. This is our first lesson in this series. Today we will be learning about comparing and contrasting using text evidence to support our thinking. For today's lesson, you will need paper and pencil. I'll give you a moment to gather your supplies. All right, let's get started. This week we are focusing on comparing and contrasting for lesson 1. So I have a Venn diagram. This is what we'll be using for our activity in a little bit. On the outside shows our differences, so this only pertains to topic A, and this information only pertains to topic B. Where the circles intersect, that's where we'll put our similarities, because both A and B have those things in common. The story we're reading today is called Darnell Rock Reporting. Darnell Rock feels that his teachers only notice him, his friends, and his sister Tamika when they get in trouble. Then a homeless man, Sweetie Jones, inspires Darnell to write an article in the school newspaper about turning a deteriorating basketball court into a garden to feed the homeless. Student editor Peter Miller publishes Darnell's article in the town newspaper. Not everyone agrees with him, though, including student Linda Gold and teacher Miss Joyner. A city council meeting will decide what to do with the basketball court. Darnell is nervous about presenting his opinion, but his parents and teachers, like Mr. Baker and Miss Seldes, all support him. Before the meeting, everyone at school has read Darnell's article, which is pictured below, and an opposing article written by Linda that ran in the school newspaper, which we'll get to next. So if you notice, the author has separated this information into its own text box and has even colored it differently. So this is giving us background information on what's transpired before we have entered into the story. Let's go ahead and take a look at Darnell's article. Nobody wants to be homeless, Jones said. He's a homeless man who lives in our city of Oakdale. It is for him and people like him that I think we should build a garden where the basketball courts were near the school. That way the homeless people can help themselves by raising food. You see a man or woman that's hungry and you don't feed them, or you help them feed themselves, then you got to say you don't mind people being hungry, Mr. Jones says. And if you don't mind people being hungry, then there's something wrong with you. This is what Mr. Sweetie Jones said when I spoke to him. I don't want to be the kind of person who says it's all right for some people to be hungry. I want to do something about it, but I think there is another reason to have the garden. Things can happen to people that they don't plan. You can get sick and not know why, or even homeless. But sometimes there are things you can do to change your life or make it good. If you don't do anything to make your life good, it will probably not be good. I was born poor and I will probably be poor all my life, Mr. Sweetie Jones said. I think maybe it is not how you were born that makes the most difference, but what you do with your life. The garden is a chance for some people to help their own lives. Darnell Rock is a 7th grader at South Oakdale Middle School. The school board has proposed that the site that Mr. Rock wants to make into a garden be used as a parking lot for teachers. The city council will decide the issue tomorrow evening. So let's see what Linda has to say. Teaching is a difficult profession. Teachers need as much support as they possibly can get. After all, we are dependent on them for our future. Education is the key to a good and secure future, and teachers help us get that education. We must give them all the support we can. That is why I am supporting the idea of building a parking lot near the school. There are some people in our school who think it is a good idea to build a garden so that the homeless can use it. Use it for what? Homeless people don't have experience farming and could not use the land anyway. This is just a bad idea that will help nobody and will hurt the teachers. The teachers give us good examples of how we should live, how we should conduct ourselves. The homeless people, even though it is no fault of theirs, don't give us good examples. On Friday evening at 7 p.m., the City Council will meet to make a final decision. I urge them to support the teachers, support education, and support the students at South Oakdale. So you can see there's very differing opinions on what should be done with that land. So let's see what the City Council has to say. You see anybody from school? Larry looked over the large crowd at the Oakdale Court building. There goes Mr. Derby and Mr. Baker, Tamika pointed toward the front of the building. Darnell felt a lump in the pit of his stomach. There was at least 100 people at the city council meeting. Tamika led them through the crowd to where she had spotted Mr. Derby and South Oakdale's principal. The large, high-ceilinged room had rows of benches that faced the low platform for the city council. Linda Gold was already sitting in the front row. Darnell saw that her parents were with her. He had brought a copy of the journal with him and saw that a few other people, grown-ups, also had copies of the paper. The 9 members of the city council arrived and the meeting was called to order. The city clerk said there were 5 items on the agenda and read them off. The first 3 items were about building code violations. Then came something about funding the city's library. The last item will be the use of basketball court as a parking lot at South Oakdale Middle School, the clerk said. We have 3 speakers scheduled. Linda turned and smiled at Darnell. Darnell didn't know what building code violations were, but watched as building owners showed diagrams explaining why there were violations. The first 2 weren't that interesting, but the third one was. A company had built a 5-story building that was supposed to be a minimum of 25 feet from the curb, but it was only 15 feet. You mean to tell me that your engineers only had 15-foot rulers? One councilman asked. Well, we measured it right the first time. The builder shifted from 1 foot to the other, but then we made some changes in the design and somehow we sort of forgot about, well, you know, the other 5 feet. For Darnell, the builder sounded like a kid in his homeroom trying to make an excuse for not having his homework. Can you just slide the building back 5 or 6 feet? The councilman asked. Everybody laughed and the builder actually smiled, but Darnell could tell that he didn't think it was funny. Somebody touched Darnell on his shoulder and he turned and saw his parents. We have this ordinance for a reason, a woman on the council was saying. I don't think we should lightly dismiss the violation. An exception granted here is just to encourage others to break the law. This is going to ruin me, the builder said. I've been in Oakdale all my life and I think I've made a contribution. Let's have a vote, the head of the council spoke sharply. Let's have a vote to postpone a decision, the woman who had spoken before said. We'll give Mr. Miller an opportunity to show his good faith. What do you want me to do? The builder asked. That's up to you, the woman said. Next time you better get it right, Tamika called out. She's right, the councilwoman said. There was a vote and the decision was postponed. The builder gave Tamika a dirty look as he pushed his papers into his briefcase. The city library funding was next, and 8 people, including Miss Selda, spoke for the library, but the council said it didn't have any more money. There was some booing, including some from Tamika and Larry. Darnell knew that if he didn't have to speak, he would have enjoyed the meeting. The issue at South Oakdale is should the old basketball courts be used as a parking lot or should they be used as a community garden? We're going to have to pay for paving the parking lot? A councilman asked. Does it have to be paved? It is my understanding that it doesn't have to be paid, the head of the council answered. Am I right on that? Yes, you are, Miss Joyner spoke up from the audience. We have 2 young people from the school to speak, the councilwoman said. The first is Miss Gold. Linda went into the middle aisle where there was a microphone. She began reading her article in the snootiest voice that Darnell had ever heard. He felt a knot in his stomach. He turned to look at his mother, and she was smiling. On the stage, some of the councilmen were looking at some papers. I hope I don't mess up, he whispered to Tamika. You won't, Tamika said. Linda finished reading her article and then turned toward Darnell. Although everybody would like to help the homeless, she said, schools are supposed to be for kids and for those who teach kids. Thank you. There was applause for Linda, and Miss Joyner stood up and nodded toward her. Darnell felt his hand shaking. And if you notice, the audience is kind of speaking up and participating a little bit. So it looks like Linda's went pretty well. We'll see what happens with Darnell. Darnell's name was called, and he made the long trip to the microphone. When I first thought about having a garden instead of a parking lot, I thought it was just a good idea, Darnell said. Then, when the Journal asked me to send them a copy of my interview with Mr. Jones, I was thinking that it was mainly a good idea to have a garden to help out the homeless people. But now I think it might be a good idea to have the garden to help out the kids, some of the kids in the school. Sometimes when people go through their life, they don't do the things that can make them a good life. I don't know why they don't do the right thing, or maybe even if they know what the right thing is sometimes. But I see the same thing in my school, South Oakdale. Some of the kids always do okay, but some of us don't. Maybe their parents are telling them something, or maybe they know something special. But if you're a kid who isn't doing this so good, people start off telling you what you should be doing. And you know it, but sometimes you still don't get it done and you mess up some more. Then people start expecting you to mess up, and then you start expecting to mess up. Teachers get mad at you, or the principal, or your parents. They act like your messing up was on purpose, like you want to get bad marks and stuff like that. Then you don't want people getting on your case all the time, so you don't do much, because the less you do, the less they're going to be on your case. Only that doesn't help anything, and everybody knows it, but that's the way it goes. You seem to be doing all right, young man, the head of the city council said. I wasn't doing too hot before, Darnell said, taking a quick look over to where Mr. Baker sat. But when I got on the paper and the journal printed my article, then everybody started treating me different. People came up to me and started explaining their points of view instead of just telling me what to do. And you people are listening to me. The kids I hung out with, they called us the corner crew, are mostly good kids, but you wouldn't listen to them unless they got into trouble. In South Oakdale, some kids have bad things happen to them, like they get sick, and I don't know why that happens, but all they can do is go to the hospital. And some kids just get left out of the good things and can't find a way of getting back into them. People get mad at them the same way they get mad at the homeless people or people who beg on the street. Maybe the garden will be a way for the homeless people to get back into some good things, and maybe seeing the homeless people getting back into a better life will be a way for some of the kids to think about what's happening to them. Thank you. So if you notice the difference, Linda read straight from her article, where Darnell is really speaking from the heart, and he's trying to show them that there's a bigger purpose than just feeding the homeless behind this garden that he wants to have. There was some applause as Darnell turned to go back to his seat. Just a minute, young man, one of the councilmen called to him. The girl said that the people don't know anything about raising a garden. Is that true? It doesn't matter, someone said from the audience. I'm from the college, and we can help with technical advice. I didn't ask you, the councilman said. I'm telling you anyway, the man said. I don't know how effective a community garden would be, the councilman said. You can't feed people from a garden. You could sell what they grow, Darnell heard himself saying. I think bringing people who are non-school people into that close contact with children might not be that good an idea, the councilman said. Who was the last speaker? Mr. Jones, the clerk said. Sweeby came into the middle aisle, and a lot of people began to talk among themselves. There was a lot of things they were interested in, and most of them were not interested in the school parking lot. So again, there's some audience participation. In this case, see, they're trying to help Darnell to let them know that they'll be there to support him if he needs it. I just wanted to ask you why you don't listen to this boy, Sweeby asked. You have 4 minutes to speak, the councilman said. He seemed angry. We don't have to answer your questions. You don't have to answer my questions, Sweeby said. And you don't have to have the garden. You don't have to think about us. What did you call us? Non-school people? But it's a shame you don't want to listen to this boy. I wish he'd been my friend when I was his age. Maybe I would be sitting in one of your seats instead of being over here. Is there anything more? The councilman asked. Nah, you can just forget about the whole thing now, Sweeby said. Go on back to your papers. I think we can vote on this issue now, the councilman said. I think the councilman looked at the agenda to find Darnell's name. Mr. Darnell Rock had some good points, but it's still a tough issue. Let's get on with the vote. The vote went quickly. 3 council people decided not to vote. 5 voted against the garden, and only 1 voted for it. Darnell took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Tamika patted him on his hand. When he looked at her, she had tears in her eyes. Darnell felt like he let Sweeby down. His father patted him on the back, and Miss Seldes came over. You did a good job, she said. Really good. I lost, Darnell said. Sometimes you lose, Miss Silva says, but you still did a good job. So she's trying to show Darnell that he gave it his very best, and sometimes that makes you successful, and sometimes you have to come back and try again. Sweeby and some of his friends were waiting outside the council meeting and shook hands with Darnell. Sweeby was telling him how the members of the council didn't really care about people when Darnell saw Linda through the crowd. She waved and he waved back. She was smiling. Larry's mother came over and asked his father for a lift home, and they were waiting for Larry when Peter Miller from the Journal came over. Hey, you want to write another article for the paper? He said. There's a guy who wants to donate a couple of lots for a garden in another location. My boss wants to run it as a human interest piece. Yeah, sure, Darnell said. You want a long article or a short one? I don't know. Call the paper tomorrow and ask for the city desk, the reporter said. My editor will give you the word count. Okay, Darnell said. All right, let's head to our activity. All right, so what we're looking at today is the differences and the similarities between the ideas that Darnell had for the community garden and the idea that Linda had for it. And we're looking at the big ideas that Darnell had. So I'm going to my laser pointer here. So it's always important to go back through the text and pull your information out there. So what do we know? That they want to build a community garden. Okay, he knows that it will help the homeless. He says that way the homeless people can help themselves and get some food. He believes that no one could go hungry, and that's something that Phoebe had talked about. And then down here, Darnell rephrased again. He says, I don't want people to go hungry. Darnell believes that this will help kids learn, and he really states that up here, that kids, sometimes things happen to people, and it's nothing that they choose. It's just what happens in life. And so he's thinking that maybe this can help kids learn from this situation. And he also talked about that during the speech for the city council. He said that he believes, even though if you're not born into things a certain way, if you do important things with your life, that could change your trajectory about where you're going. And that really the garden is a chance for some people to help themselves where maybe they haven't been given that opportunity in the past. So we're going to take a look at Linda's ideas now. So let me shift myself again. Okay, so ideas that Linda has. Linda believes that they should create a parking lot, and this will help teachers. So she talked about that several times, but she said teachers need help. You know, they're leading the world in educating our future, and if we help teachers, then that will in turn help students. So one good deed goes to another. She did remind people that homeless people just didn't have that gardening experience, that could they really use the land appropriately without that experience. She also said that sometimes homeless people don't often give us the good examples that we're looking for. And she did say, you know, it's no fault of their own, but they're just not the examples we need, where the teachers, they provide the examples for kids about how we should conduct ourselves and how we should live. So let's look at ideas of Darnell. It says, build a community garden, help the homeless. No one should go hungry. It's important what you do with your life, and it's a chance for people to help themselves. And Linda's ideas, she wants to create the parking lot. She says it will help teachers. The homeless don't often give us good examples. Where teachers are providing good examples, so helping those teachers is going to lead to more good examples for students to follow. So those are the differences. Let's see the similarities. She believes it can help kids learn, and Darnell said that as well. Now, it might be that they're learning different things, but both of them, that was an idea behind the creations they wanted for that parking lot. And that the homeless people don't usually have gardening activity you may want to do after this. So for our independent activity, Explain two main differences in the plans presented by Darnell and Linda, and use text evidence to support your thinking. Again, you can be using this information from the Venn diagram that we created. Hopefully you'll have an opportunity to do this. And it was great working with you today, and I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson.